Wednesday, June 19. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. Jamaicans are being urged to brace for above normal temperatures and fewer wet days from this month to August. The Meteorological Service of Jamaica says as a result, there will be an increase in heat stress on humans, animals and crops, as well as reduced inflows in dams and reservoirs. It says the projections are based on findings from seasonal climate forecast models, which indicate a warmer and drier Caribbean. Director of the National Meteorological Service, Evan Thompson, said it is possible even where the temperature goes up by only a part of a degree, the impact will be felt. He said factors such as weak El Niño system will contribute to the above normal temperatures and low rainfall. Minister of Health and Wellness Dr. Christopher Tufton has conceded that the country does not spend enough on healthcare, but he argues that poor consumption habits coupled with infrequent medical checkups are largely to blame for the high incidence of deaths from non-communicable diseases. According to Dr. Tufton, non-communicable diseases, also called lifestyle diseases, account for some 70% of deaths in Jamaica. Speaking to the Jamaica Observer, the minister noted that of the roughly 18,000 deaths in the island per year, more than 50% are people who suffered from lifestyle-related ailments. As examples, he noted that over 6,000 Jamaicans die from cardiovascular diseases each year, while 4,000 die from cancer. Tufton added that in addition to the excessive consumption, Jamaicans do not exercise enough and are not aware of their health statuses, which ultimately burden the health sector. Going further with the statistics, Tufton said 1 of 8 Jamaicans are believed to be diabetic. 1 in 3 Jamaicans are also believed to be hypertensive, and approximately 4 out of 10 persons are unaware of their status. Last month, Dr. Tufton outlined in Parliament a raft of initiatives which the ministry is expected to carry out with a view to increasing access to health care, improving consumption habits, and encouraging exercise and frequent health checks, among others. Director General of the Planning Institute of Jamaica, PIOJ, Dr. Wayne Henry, says strengthening existing partnerships and forging new ties between Jamaica and its diaspora are vital to achieving sustainable growth and development. Noting the national policy on international migration and development, he acknowledges that migrants are potential agents of development who are well positioned to strengthen cooperation between countries of origin and destination and contribute to national development through various avenues. This, he says, includes investments and knowledge sharing. He also noted that while remittances from Jamaican immigrants have been critical in sustaining families and strengthening the country's foreign currency reserves, there is even greater scope for the diaspora to make contribution by investing in real estate and the venture capital and capital markets. Dr. Henry emphasized that the diaspora plays an important role in fostering economic growth, strengthening social protection, and building environmental resilience. The Director General was addressing Monday's session of the 8th Biennial Jamaica Diaspora Conference, being held at the Jamaica Conference Center in downtown Kingston. Employees at PetroJam have been left demoralized after nearly 6 months of public hearings by a parliamentary committee that has shown light on alleged acts of nepotism, cronyism and corruption, which cost the state-owned oil refinery millions of dollars. That's the word from Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology, Carol Palmer. She says employees have indicated that the hearings by the Public Accounts Committee, PAC, of Parliament have affected them personally, with some reporting that they have been subjected to abuse in public.
Shortly after assuming office, the Minister and I went to PetroJam for a staff meeting. The staff has been severely affected by this process. Members of staff came to us after the meeting individually to express how it has affected them on a very personal level, on their family level. Minister said in the sectoral presentation they have stopped wearing the company shirts because of the level of abuse they would be exposed to in the public space. One parent said to me, one worker said to me, her child says, "What you doing with Petrojam pen? Carry back them something next thing them say, oh, your teeth in it." So this is the level of demoralization that the staff of the entity has been subject to over this long period of time. And yes, I have no objection to us examining our entities as we ought, but then, you know, the process and the how we try to contain it to minimize the effect on persons, because staff, you know, they are saying, we were not responsible for this. We didn't take the decisions. We didn't this and we didn't do the other thing. And so there's a lot of work that has to be done with the staff of Petrojam going forward as they try to rebuild their image. Personally, I was asked a couple of weeks, I think maybe the same weekend after I was assigned, I went to a funeral and I was being asked, also now you're in the Petrojam ministry, we can get job and get money. So, you know, there was an image that has been created of this entity.
The disclosure comes as the PAC wrapped up its hearings into the damning findings of a performance audit of the state-owned oil refinery. The audit was conducted by Auditor General's Department. PAC Chairman Mark Golding expressed sympathy for the employees, but insisted that the hearings were a necessity by the nepotism, cronyism, and the corruption that took place there.
We sympathize with the staff who have gone through this process. I mean, it is really as a result of the uncovering of a level of impropriety, cronyism, nepotism, and outright corruption, which is unprecedented as far as I'm concerned during my time in public life. And I think the committee had an obligation and a duty to take this report extremely seriously.
Palmer acknowledged that the hearings, which started in January, were important, but cautioned members on the process.
While we examine issues, we need to be careful of the implications of what happens. And you know, all of this mopping up as we do the corrective action and seek to mitigate the negatives that have been created or have occurred in this process. We have to now build back lives.
Talks have begun between the Jamaican government and the United States Embassy officials to probe whether Washington adhered to maritime protocol in wake of a lawsuit filed by 4 Jamaican fishermen who claim to have endured inhumane conditions while detained on U.S. Coast Guard vessels for 32 days. The American Civil Liberties Union last Wednesday filed a lawsuit in the United States on behalf of the fishermen Robert Weir, Patrick Ferguson, Luther Patterson, and David Williams, who said they were captured by the U.S. Coast Guard and subjected to inhumane conditions. The 5 men were detained after the Jamaican government granted a waiver of jurisdiction to the U.S. Coast Guard under a 1997 agreement between the two countries, commonly referred to as the Shipwright Agreement, according to the press statement issued yesterday afternoon by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. The original agreement, which represents cooperation between the countries' anti-drug trafficking laws, did not allow U.S. authorities to detain Jamaican nationals encountered at sea, but a 2016 amendment to Section 20, subsection 2 of Jamaica's Maritime Drug Trafficking Suppression Act, which explicitly barred the U.S. Coast Guard from detaining them, was removed. The Kamina Johnson-Smith-led Foreign Affairs Ministry said yesterday that it, quote, reiterates the seriousness it accords to promoting and protecting the rights of Jamaicans at home and abroad at all times as an essential pillar of its foreign and domestic policy, end quote. Starting today, Jamaicans will observe 4 days of mourning in honor of the life and service of former Prime Minister Edward Seaga, who died on May 28. No public social functions or official events should be held during the period. According to a statement from the Office of the Prime Minister, it is customary during an official period of mourning to curtail activities of a flamboyant or celebratory nature and restrict engagements deemed noisy. Additionally, throughout the period, the national flag is to be flown at half-staff on all public buildings. The state funeral for Mr. Seaga will be held on Sunday beginning at noon at Holy Trinity Cathedral. Interment will follow at the National Heroes Park. There will be a joint meeting of Parliament at 2 o'clock this afternoon to pay tribute to Mr. Seaga. The US dollar on Tuesday, June 18, ended trading at $130, down by 6 cents, and that's according to the Bank of Jamaica's daily foreign exchange trading summary. Meanwhile, the Canadian dollar ended trading at Jamaica $96.84, up from $96.74, while the British pound sterling ended trading at Jamaican $162.61, down from Jamaican $163.47. In regional news, the Guyana government has suffered 2 major setbacks in its efforts to continue in office as the Trinidad-based Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, ruled on Tuesday that the opposition-inspired motion of no confidence against it in December last year was valid. Opposition leader Brat Jagdeo had successfully piloted in the National Assembly on December 21 last year.
The court decided that the requirement for a majority of all the elected members of the National Assembly referred to a majority of the total number of votes or seats in the Assembly, irrespective of the number of members who actually vote. In determining that majority, the court was of the opinion that the half+1 rule was not applicable. The court held that since the Assembly comprised an odd number of persons, that is 65, when all the members of the Assembly are present and vote, all that is necessary is to determine whether the motion has garnered, quote, a majority of all the elected members, unquote. Such a majority in the court's view was clearly at least 33 votes.
One of the main issues of the case was whether 33 or 34 votes were required to carry the motion, given that the membership of the National Assembly totaled 65 members. Sharandras Prasad, who was then a government legislator, voted in support of the motion. The CCJ was also asked to determine whether Prasad was ineligible to vote as he was a dual citizen, since dual citizens are not allowed to put themselves up for candidacy in elections to the National Assembly.
The court rejected the submission that Mr. Prasad was absolutely required to vote against the motion of no confidence, along with other members of the government list, unless the party's whip granted permission for a so-called conscience vote. The court found that nothing in Article 156(3) or anywhere else in the Constitution prohibited Mr. Prasad from voting against the government on any particular measure. Such a vote may well cause the representative of his list to remove him from the Assembly, but his vote would still be valid. Having regard to all the findings above, the court held that the National Assembly properly passed a motion of no confidence in the government.
So where does Guyana go from here? Well, the CCJ says that in the coming days it will hear further arguments from the parties on what the next steps should be. And still in Guyana, President David Granger said voters will be given a new opportunity to elect a government after the Trinidad-based Caribbean Court of Justice validated a motion of no confidence against his administration that had been passed in the National Assembly on December 21 last year. However, the president stressed the need for a clean voters list in order to hold fresh elections.
It is essential that we hold fair, free and credible elections. We cannot proceed on the current list of voters. It is outdated and corrupted. It may hold as many as 200,000 incorrect entries. What is more, those who have reached the age of 18 years since the last elections are not in it. The Constitution entitles all citizens over the age of 18 the right to vote. It is a democratic imperative that house-to-house registration be completed swiftly so we can have an election at the earliest opportunity. The chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, Justice Patterson, has previously informed me that the commission will be ready to hold elections in November 2019. This will be after the completion of house-to-house registration. I now await a recommendation for a specific date from GCOM, and I will then issue a proclamation.
But even as the government awaits to hear the recommended date from GCOM, the CCJ, which is also Guyana's highest and final court, also ruled that the process through which Reverend Justice retired James Patterson was appointed chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, GCOM, by President David Granger was flawed and in breach of the Guyana Constitution. Meanwhile, opposition leader Brat Jagdeo welcomed the ruling and says he expects elections to be held within the next 2 to 3 months. He addressed a press conference on Tuesday.
Granger just said November the elections will be held. So we have to now live with the government a year, 1 year. 1 year after it was declared illegal to now have to wait on elections. Well, Granger has another thing coming because we are going to urge the international, community. So Granger lives in a bubble. I'm just told that he said after house to house and November that Granger lives in a bubble. He hangs on with his corrupt cabal on the government at all costs. That is it. He is divorced from the reality of constitutional rule. Imagine you have to be severely diminished in capacity to read a ruling of the one that you just had today from the CCJ and then argued as though he has full authority like a normal president would have, or a president that is legal would have, if to declare when elections should be held.
In other news, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, UWI, Sir Hilary Beckles, is to appear before the United States Congress on reparations. Sir Hilary has been invited by the Texas Democrat Representative Sheila Jackson Lee to appear before the House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights and Civil Liberties today. Sir Hilary, who is also a historian, has been a long-standing ally of former Congressman John Conyers, who, for more than 40 years, struggled to get a reparations bill through the Congress.
A statement from the UWI said that on several occasions, Sir Hilary and Representative Conyers addressed the Congressional Black Caucus in an effort to build support in the Congress, and their long history of lobbying has now matured with this hearing. Sir Hilary noted that it is a special tribute to the leadership of Representative Conyers, as well as CARICOM and Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves in particular, who established the path-breaking Regional Commission on Reparations 5 years ago, which inspired the political movement in the U.S.
In sports, Jamaica's Reggae Girls had something to celebrate despite the lost hopes of advancing to the round of 16 of the FIFA Women's World Cup in France. Substitute Havana Salon created history by scoring their first ever goal at the tournament, having netted in the 49th minute of their team's 4-1 loss to Australia in Grenoble on Tuesday. The Reggae Girls lost their previous Group C games 3-0 to Brazil and 5-0 to eventual group winners, Italy. And that's the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. Pleasant viewing.